Just another flight, she thought, checking her watch. 20 minutes until boarding. Just enough time to grab a coffee. Maya was tired but focused. 3 years of research had led to this moment, presenting her findings at the National Medical Conference. As one of the few black female neurologists in the country, she knew her work would be watched closely. The pressure was familiar, almost comforting in its consistency. The airport buzzed around her, families reuniting, business people typing furiously on laptops, airport staff directing the controlled chaos of modern air travel. Maya sipped her coffee and reviewed her notes one last time. Now boarding Flight 2187 to Chicago, starting with our first-class passengers and those needing special assistance. Maya gathered her things and joined the line, boarding pass ready on her phone. She'd splurged on first class using miles accumulated from hospital travel. Today was special. Today she'd earned a little extra comfort. "Good morning, Dr. Johnson. Seat 3A is on your right," the flight attendant said, checking her boarding pass. "Can I get you something to drink once we're in the air?" "Water would be perfect, thank you," Maya replied, making her way down the aisle. Seat 3A was by the window, just what she wanted. Maya stored her briefcase under the seat in front of her and tried to place her carry-on in the overhead bin. It was a tight fit. The bin seemed slightly smaller than standard, and her regulation-sized suitcase wouldn't slide in completely, no matter how she angled it. "Need some help?" asked a man across the aisle. "I think I've got it," Maya said, giving the suitcase one final push. It still stuck out slightly, but it wasn't going to fall. She'd ask the flight attendant about it once everyone was seated. More passengers filed onto the plane, the usual mix of excited vacationers and weary business travelers. Maya settled into her seat, enjoying the extra legroom of first class. She closed her eyes briefly, visualizing her presentation slides, running through potential questions colleagues might ask. A tap on her shoulder interrupted her thoughts. "Ma'am, your bag needs to be properly stowed." Maya opened her eyes to see a white man in his 50s wearing a pilot's uniform. Co-pilot, she noted, seeing the stripes on his shoulder. His name tag read, Captain Robert Hendricks. "I'm sorry," Maya said politely. "The compartment seems a bit small. I pushed it in as far as it would go." "It needs to be completely inside," Hendricks said, his tone clipped. "I understand," Maya replied, unbuckling her seatbelt. "Let me try again." She stood and reached for her suitcase, pulling it out to attempt a better position. As she did, she explained, "I fly weekly for work and I've never had trouble with this bag before. I think there might be something at the back of the compartment." "Just put it in properly," Hendricks said, louder now. Other passengers were beginning to watch. Maya felt her cheeks warm but kept her voice steady. "I'm trying to do that. See how there's something blocking the back of the bin?" She pointed to show him the obstruction, what looked like part of the plane's internal structure taking up space in the bin. "Don't tell me how to do my job," Hendricks snapped. "Either stow it correctly or check it." Maya took a deep breath. She'd encountered this type of interaction before, when someone decided to see her confidence as aggression, her explanations as backtalk. "I'm not telling you how to do your job, Captain Hendricks. I'm simply showing you why my bag won't fit completely. Perhaps there's another bin I could use." The co-pilot's face reddened. "I don't have time for this. The other bins are for other passengers." "I understand you're busy," Maya said, working to keep her voice calm and reasonable. "I'm just trying to find a solution." A nearby passenger, an older white woman, spoke up. "There's space in this bin over here if you need it, dear." Maya smiled, gratefully. "Thank you, I appreciate—" "She stays in her assigned bin," Hendricks interrupted. "Airline policy." Maya blinked, confused. "Is that actually policy? I've never heard of assigned overhead bins." Several passengers were now openly watching. The atmosphere in the cabin had shifted from the usual pre-flight bustle to uncomfortable tension. "Are you questioning my authority on this aircraft?" Hendricks demanded, stepping closer to Maya. She instinctively stepped back, feeling the edge of her seat against her legs. "I'm not questioning your authority, just trying to understand the rule you're citing." "The rule is you do what I say on this plane, he said, voice rising. Now sit down and stop causing a scene. Maya felt a flicker of anger but pushed it down. Years of dealing with difficult colleagues and sometimes hostile work environments had taught her to stay composed. I'll sit down as soon as my bag is properly stowed, she said evenly. Could you please help me find a solution instead of creating a problem? The cabin went quiet. Maya realized immediately that her words, though reasonable, had crossed some invisible line for Hendricks. His face contorted with anger. Creating a problem? You're the one creating a problem. I only meant, Maya began. What happened next seemed to unfold in slow motion. Hendricks' right hand swung up and across, connecting with Maya's left cheek with enough force to snap her head to the side. The slap echoed through the silent cabin. Maya stumbled back into her seat, her hand automatically rising to her face. The shock was total. Around her, passengers gasped. Someone said, "Oh my God." Another voice shouted, "He hit her." For a moment, Maya couldn't process what had happened. Her medical training kicked in, cataloging her physical state. No serious injury, possible minor contusion, elevated heart rate from shock and adrenaline. Her mind struggled to catch up. A pilot had just slapped her. In public. On an airplane. For asking about luggage storage. Hendricks seemed equally shocked by his own actions. He stood frozen, hand still raised, eyes wide. She was getting aggressive, he said, but his voice had lost its certainty. You all saw it? Maya found her voice. You struck me, she said, the words coming out surprisingly steady. You physically assaulted me for asking a question about my luggage. Passengers were standing now. Phones were out recording. A flight attendant pushed through the crowd. What's happening here? She asked, looking between Maya and the co-pilot. He slapped her, said the older woman who had offered Ben space earlier, for no reason at all. She was interfering with pre-flight procedures, Hendricks countered, but even he seemed to realize how hollow the excuse sounded. The flight attendant turned to Maya, taking in her professional attire, her stunned expression, the red mark forming on her cheek. Ma'am, are you all right? Maya nodded slowly, her mind racing ahead to what this meant, for her presentation, for her safety, for what would happen next. I'd like to speak to the captain, she said. I am the captain, Hendricks interjected. You're the co-pilot, corrected, a male passenger who had been watching the captain's stripes. And you just assaulted a passenger. The main cabin door opened again, and a security officer appeared, summoned by another flight attendant. We have a situation, the first flight attendant said to the officer. To Maya's disbelief, the security officer looked at her, not Hendricks. Ma'am, I'm going to need you to come with me. Me? Maya's composure finally cracked. He's the one who struck me. There are dozens of witnesses. The security officer glanced at Hendricks, who was straightening his uniform. Sir? She was becoming belligerent about stowing her bag, Hendricks said, creating a security issue. Maya looked around at the passengers, many of whom were shaking their heads in disbelief. This is happening, she thought. They're going to remove me from this plane after I was assaulted. With a calm that surprised even herself, Maya reached for her phone in her pocket. She knew exactly what to do. Maya didn't move. Instead, she held up one finger in a wait gesture and unlocked her phone. The cabin remained oddly quiet, that peculiar hush that falls when people know they're witnessing something significant. Before I go anywhere, Maya said clearly, I need to make one call. Captain Hendricks scoffed. This isn't a negotiation. You can make your call from the terminal. Maya ignored him, scrolling through her contacts with steady fingers, despite her racing heart. When she found the number she wanted, she pressed dial and raised the phone to her ear, maintaining eye contact with the security officer. Who are you calling? The officer asked, sounding uncertain now. Maya didn't answer him directly. Instead, she spoke into the phone. Hello, this is Dr. Maya Johnson. I need to speak with Director Harrington immediately. Yes, it's an emergency. I'll hold. The name meant nothing to the people around her, but Maya's tone, professional, authoritative, unrattled despite the red mark still visible on her cheek, made an impression. Several passengers had their phones out, still recording. The security officer glanced back at Captain Hendricks, whose confident expression had begun to falter. "Look," the officer said, lowering his voice. "Let's handle this calmly. We can discuss the situation in private." Maya continued to hold the phone to her ear but addressed the officer. "I was just physically assaulted by an airline employee while sitting quietly in my paid seat. There will be no private discussion. There will be proper documentation and accountability." A woman across the aisle nodded in agreement. A man 2 rows back said, "I got the whole thing on video." Maya's phone call connected. "Director Harrington? This is Maya Johnson. I'm currently on Flight 2187 at Gate B-17. I need to report a serious safety incident involving a crew member. He paused, listening. "Yes, that's correct. The co-pilot, Captain Robert Hendricks, just physically struck me across the face during boarding over a dispute about overhead bin space." Another pause. "No, I'm currently being asked to leave the aircraft while the co-pilot remains on duty." The security officer's expression changed as Maya continued her conversation. He stepped back slightly, his hand dropping to his side. "FAA Safety Oversight Committee," Maya said into the phone, her voice carrying in the quiet cabin. "Yes, I believe. This falls under both safety protocol violations and potential discriminatory conduct." At the mention of FAA, Captain Hendricks's face drained of color. The flight attendant who had been standing nearby suddenly touched her earpiece listening to a message, then whispered something to the security officer. "I understand," Maya continued into the phone. "Yes, I can hold for the Chief of Operations." "Captain." Hendricks stepped forward. "There's been a misunderstanding," he said, his voice noticeably softer. "Perhaps we can—" "Step back, sir," the security officer said, now positioning himself between Maya and the co-pilot. The dynamic had shifted completely in the span of a 30-second phone call. Maya kept the phone to her ear, but addressed a flight attendant. "Could I please have some water? And perhaps some ice for my face?" "Right away, Dr. Johnson," the flight attendant replied, hurrying to comply. Passengers exchanged glances. The woman who had offered bin space earlier leaned over. "Are you really on an FAA committee?" Maya nodded, then returned her attention to the phone. "Yes, Director, I'm still here. The airport operations manager will meet me where?" "I see. Yes. I have witnesses and there's video evidence as well." The main cabin door opened again and a different security officer entered, accompanied by a man in a suit who radiated authority. The newcomer scanned the cabin, quickly assessed the situation, and approached Maya. "Dr. Johnson, I'm Thomas Reynolds, Regional Director for the airline. We've been notified of a serious incident on this flight." Maya nodded, still listening to her phone. "Director Harrington, the airline's regional director has just arrived. Would you like to speak with him?" She paused. "Understood." She lowered the phone slightly. "Director Harrington would like me to put this on speaker?" Reynolds nodded, his expression grave. Maya tapped her screen and an authoritative female voice filled the immediate area. "This is Elizabeth Harrington, Executive Director of Aviation Safety with the Federal Aviation Administration. Who am I speaking with?" "Thomas Reynolds, Regional Director for Atlantic Airways, Director Harrington." "Mr. Reynolds, we have a situation that requires immediate attention. One of your pilots has allegedly assaulted a passenger who happens to be a member of our Civilian Oversight Committee. I need confirmation that the pilot in question has been removed from duty pending investigation." Reynolds straightened his tie. "We're addressing the situation now, Director. Captain Hendricks will be removed from this flight immediately. And I expect a full report on my desk by end of day." Director Harrington continued. "Dr. Johnson, are you receiving proper medical attention?" "The flight attendant is bringing ice," Maya replied. "Not good enough," Harrington said firmly. "Mr. Reynolds, please ensure Dr. Johnson receives proper medical evaluation. This incident will trigger a full safety review of your airline's protocols and crew training procedures." The cabin remained silent as everyone listened to this exchange. Captain Hendricks stood rigidly by the cockpit door, his earlier bravado completely evaporated. "Dr. Johnson, when you're ready, please proceed to the Admiral's Club where the airport operations manager will take your statement," Harrington said. "I've also notified our legal department." "Thank you, Director." Maya said. Mr. Reynolds, Harrington continued, I trust you understand the gravity of this situation. Absolutely, Director, Reynolds replied. We take this extremely seriously. Good. Keep me updated hourly. Dr. Johnson, we'll speak again soon. The call ended and Maya lowered her phone. The cabin remained eerily quiet. Reynolds turned to the security officers. Please escort Captain Hendricks to the office. He's being removed from duty effective immediately. This is ridiculous, Hendricks protested, but his voice lacked conviction. She was interfering with, not another word. Reynolds cut him off sharply. Security, please. As the security officers led Hendricks away, Reynolds turned back to Maya. Dr. Johnson, I want to personally apologize for this inexcusable incident. If you'll come with me, we'll make sure you receive proper medical attention and take your statement in comfort. Maya nodded, gathering her briefcase. The flight attendant returned with ice wrapped in a cloth napkin, which Maya pressed gently to her cheek. What about her luggage? Asked the woman who had offered bin space. I'll have it retrieved immediately, Reynolds assured her. As Maya stood to leave, several passengers spoke up. I have video of the whole thing, offered a young man. I'd be happy to share it. Me too, added another passenger. That was completely unprovoked. I'm an attorney, said a woman in a business suit. What happened here was assault, plain and simple. Maya looked around at these strangers who had become witnesses and allies in a matter of minutes. Thank you, she said simply. Your support means a lot. As she followed Reynolds off the plane, Maya felt a complex mix of emotions. Anger at being assaulted, validation that the system she was part of had responded appropriately, and a deep awareness that without her position and that one crucial phone call, this situation might have ended very differently. In the jetway, Reynolds spoke, quietly. Dr. Johnson, I want to assure you that Captain Hendricks' actions do not reflect our airline's values. We'll be conducting a thorough investigation. Maya nodded, the ice pack still pressed to her face. I appreciate that, Mr. Reynolds, but I have to wonder, what happens when the person being mistreated doesn't have the FAA director's direct line? Reynolds had no immediate answer. They walked through the terminal, drawing curious glances from travelers. Maya maintained her composure, though her mind was racing. Her conference presentation was in jeopardy now. She'd need to notify the organizers, possibly reschedule. But those were logistics to be sorted later. Right now, she needed to document what had happened and ensure it was addressed properly. At the Admiral's Club entrance, a woman in a suit was waiting. Dr. Johnson, I'm Patricia Morgan, Airport Operations Manager. We have a private room ready for you. Maya nodded her thanks and followed Patricia inside. The club was quiet and comfortable, a sharp contrast to the tension-filled aircraft she'd just left. As they walked to a private conference room, Maya caught snippets of hushed conversations among staff. Word was spreading quickly. In the conference room, a medical kit was already open on the table. A man in a white coat stood as they entered. This is Dr. Wilson, one of our airport physicians, Patricia explained. Let's take a look at that cheek, Dr. Wilson said kindly. As he examined her face, Maya finally allowed herself to process what had happened. The shock was wearing off, leaving a simmering anger in its place, not just for herself, but for everyone who had ever faced similar treatment without the power to make that one critical phone call. Patricia Morgan sat across from her, notebook ready. When you're comfortable, Dr. Johnson, I'd like to take your statement. Maya took a deep breath. I'm ready now. As she recounted the events in careful detail, Maya knew this incident would have consequences beyond one pilot's career. Her position on the FAA Oversight Committee wasn't just about reviewing safety protocols and procedures. It was about ensuring the human element of air travel, the way passengers were treated, especially those from marginalized groups, received proper attention. And then he struck me, Maya said, reaching the climax of her account. Open hand, across the face, in full view of everyone, Patricia's pen moved steadily across her notebook. And what happened immediately after? He tried to justify it by claiming I was being aggressive, Maya replied. That's when I realized I needed to contact Director Harrington directly. As she finished her statement, Maya's phone buzzed with a text message. It was from the conference organizers asking if she was still planning to present that afternoon. Reality was setting in. This incident would ripple through her professional life, her personal life, perhaps even become a news story. "Is there someone we should contact for you?" Patricia asked. "Family or colleagues?" Maya considered the question. There were calls to make, certainly, but first she needed to be clear about what would happen next. "Before that," she said, "I want to understand the next steps in the investigation, and I want to make sure the other passengers who witnessed this aren't delayed any further because of it." Patricia nodded. "A new flight crew is already being arranged. As for the investigation, we'll need statements from witnesses, review of any video evidence, and Captain Hendricks will be interviewed separately." "And will there be a public statement from the airline?" Maya asked. "That would typically come from our corporate communications team," Patricia replied. "But given your position with the FAA, this may be handled differently." Maya nodded thoughtfully. One phone call had changed everything about this incident, but she couldn't help thinking about all the similar incidents that happened without such immediate consequences. "Ms. Morgan," she said after a moment, "I'd like to suggest that this incident be used as a case study for your staff training. Not because it involved me specifically, but because it highlights issues that need addressing." Patricia looked up from her notes, surprised. "That's actually an excellent suggestion, Dr. Johnson. Most people in your position would be focused on legal action." "Oh, I'm not ruling that out," Maya said with a small smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "But I'm also interested in prevention, in making sure this doesn't happen to anyone else." As the airport physician finished applying a small bandage to her cheek, Maya glanced at her reflection in a nearby window. The physical mark would fade soon enough, but the memory of that moment, and the system that had initially moved to protect the aggressor rather than the victim, would stay with her much longer. That one phone call had changed everything. Now she needed to make sure it changed things, for others too. "Dr. Johnson, could you walk us through the events one more time?" asked Gabriella Chen, the lead FAA investigator. Her colleague, James Washington, typed notes on a tablet. Maya had already told the story twice, but she understood the need for thoroughness. "I was attempting to store my carry-on in the overhead bin," she began again. "It wouldn't fit completely due to what appeared to be part of the aircraft structure taking up space in the back of the compartment." As she spoke, Maya maintained her professional demeanor, though fatigue was setting in. The adrenaline crash after such an incident was something she recognized from her medical training. Her body was processing stress even as her mind remained sharp. "And when Captain Hendricks approached, what exactly did he say?" Chen asked. Maya recounted the exchange word for word, her memory precise. As a neurologist who often interviewed patients about traumatic events, she knew how to recall details clearly. Washington looked up from his tablet. "You said passengers were recording. Have we secured that footage?" Thomas Reynolds, the airline regional director who had remained by Maya's side throughout, nodded. "We've collected contact information from 6 passengers who recorded the incident. Our legal team is reaching out to obtain copies. 3 videos have already been uploaded to social media," added a young woman from the airline's communications department. She'd been monitoring online mentions with increasing alarm. "They're gaining traction quickly." Maya wasn't surprised. In today's world, incidents like this rarely stayed contained. She thought about her presentation at the medical conference, now officially postponed until tomorrow, and wondered how many of her colleagues would see the videos before then. Knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. Patricia Morgan, the airport operations manager, entered with a folder. "Dr. Johnson, we've gathered some information you should see," she said, taking a seat. "Our HR department pulled Captain Hendricks's personnel file. This isn't his first incident involving confrontation with passengers." Maya raised an eyebrow. "Not his first?" Morgan slid the folder across the table. "There have been 3 formal complaints in the past 18 months. All involved disagreements with passengers that escalated beyond professional bounds. None resulted in physical contact before today, but there's a pattern of escalation. We're Any of these incidents investigated? Chen asked, her tone sharpening. Reynolds shifted uncomfortably. They were handled according to our standard protocols. Verbal warnings, additional training. And were any of these complaints filed by passengers of color? Maya asked quietly. The room fell silent. Morgan flipped through the papers, though Maya suspected she already knew the answer. 2 of the 3, Morgan confirmed. Both involving black female passengers. Maya nodded slowly, processing this information. So today wasn't an isolated incident. It was the predictable escalation of a pattern that your airline had documented, but failed to address adequately. Reynolds began to respond, but Chen held up a hand. Mr. Reynolds, I believe we need to expand the scope of our investigation. This is no longer just about today's incident. As the conversation continued around, Maya opened her laptop to check emails. Her inbox was flooded. Messages from conference organizers, colleagues who had somehow already heard about the incident, and most notably an email from Director Harrington with the subject line, "Call me when you're free." Maya excused herself and stepped into a quiet corner of the room to make the call. "Maya," Harrington answered immediately. "How are you holding up?" "I'm fine, Elizabeth," Maya replied. "Nothing some ibuprofen and a good night's sleep won't fix." "The physical aspects, perhaps," Harrington said. "But we both know there's more to it than that." Maya sighed. "Yes, there is. I've been briefed on the preliminary findings," Harrington continued, "including Hendrix's history of similar incidents. I want you to know that the FAA is taking this extremely seriously." "I appreciate that," Maya said. "But I'm concerned about what happens when the spotlight fades. We both know I received immediate attention because of my position. What about everyone else who doesn't have that advantage?" There was a pause on the line. "That's actually why I called. Your appointment to the Oversight Committee was based on your research into human factors in medical errors. I believe your experience today, however unfortunate, gives you a unique perspective on how human factors affect aviation safety and passenger treatment." Maya understood immediately. "You want me to lead an investigation into passenger treatment incidents, particularly those with potential bias components." "Not just an investigation," Harrington replied. "I want you to develop new protocols, training requirements, accountability systems, the works." The proposition was unexpected but intriguing. Maya glanced back at the conference room, where officials continued to discuss her case in detail. "I'll need full access to complaint records across all major airlines," she said. "Not just the cases that made it to formal reports, but the ones that were dismissed or ignored." "You'll have it," Harrington promised, "plus a dedicated team and direct reporting access to me and the administrator." Maya thought about her medical research, her patients, her teaching responsibilities. Taking on this additional role would mean adjustments to her already packed schedule, but it also meant an opportunity to create systemic change. "I'll do it," she decided. "But I want to be clear about something. This isn't about retribution against one airline or one pilot. It's about fixing a broken system." "Understood," Harrington said. "We'll announce the initiative next week. In the meantime, take care of yourself, Maya. What you experienced today was assault, plain and simple. Don't downplay that, even to yourself." After ending the call, Maya returned to the conference table just as a new person entered the room. A distinguished older man in a crisp suit who carried himself with unmistakable authority. "Dr. Johnson," Patricia Morgan said, "this is Richard Blackwell, CEO of Atlantic Airways." The CEO had flown in from company headquarters, canceling multiple meetings to address the situation personally. His presence underscored the gravity with which the airline was now treating the incident. "Dr. Johnson," Blackwell said, extending his hand. "First, let me express my profound apologies for what happened today. Captain Hendrix's actions were inexcusable and do not reflect our values as an organization." Maya shook his hand firmly. "Thank you for coming, Mr. Blackwell. I appreciate the airline taking this seriously." "More than seriously," Blackwell replied. "We're treating this as a watershed moment. Captain Hendrix has been terminated effective immediately, but that's just the beginning of our response. As the CEO outlined immediate policy changes and training initiatives, Maya observed the room dynamics with interest. The same airline representatives who had seemed defensive earlier now nodded enthusiastically at each proposed reform. The power of leadership, Maya thought. When those at the top made their priorities clear, the organization followed. Additionally, Blackwell continued, we'd like to offer you our sincere apologies in the form of lifetime premium status with our airline and unlimited first-class travel. Maya shook her head. I appreciate the gesture, Mr. Blackwell, but I can't accept personal benefits from an airline while serving on the FAA Oversight Committee. It would be a conflict of interest. Blackwell looked momentarily surprised, then nodded with respect. Of course. What would be appropriate in your view? Maya considered the question carefully. Instead of benefits for me personally, I'd suggest establishing a scholarship fund for minority students pursuing aviation careers and committing resources to the new passenger treatment protocols that Director Harrington and I will be developing. The CEO's eyebrows rose slightly at this information, but he recovered quickly. Both excellent suggestions. We'd be honored to support those initiatives. As the meeting continued, Maya found herself thinking about how quickly the situation had evolved. From being assaulted on an aircraft to helping shape industry-wide policy changes, all within a few hours. The contrast was striking and sobering. During a brief break, Maya stepped out to call the medical conference organizers and confirm her rescheduled presentation time. As she waited in the hallway, she overheard two flight attendants talking nearby. Did you hear about what happened on Flight 2187? One asked. Everyone's heard? The other replied. The pilot who hit a passenger? They say she's some big shot. With the FAA. That's the thing, though, the first said, lowering her voice. What if she hadn't been? What if she was just a regular person? Would anything have happened to him? Maya pretended not to hear, but the question echoed her own thoughts exactly. What if she hadn't been able to make that one crucial phone call? What if she had been just Dr. Maya Johnson, neurologist, instead of Dr. Maya Johnson, FAA Oversight Committee member? Her call connected, and she confirmed her presentation for the following morning. By the time she returned to the conference room, a new face had joined the group, a woman in a tailored suit who introduced herself as Lisa Patel, Atlantic Airways Chief Diversity Officer. Dr. Johnson, Patel said, I've been brought up to speed on the situation. I'd like to discuss how this incident fits into broader concerns about treatment of passengers of color. Maya appreciated the directness. I think that's an essential conversation, Ms. Patel. The data shows this wasn't an isolated incident. For the next hour, the discussion shifted from the specific details of Maya's experience to the systemic issues it highlighted. Maya shared insights from her work on human factors in medical settings, how stress, bias, and institutional culture influenced decision-making and treatment of patients. The parallels to aviation are striking, she explained. In both fields, there's a hierarchical structure, high-stress situations, and the potential for power imbalances to affect how people are treated. As the meeting finally wound down nearly 5 hours after the incident, Maya gathered her things. Despite her composure throughout, exhaustion was setting in. The emotional toll of being assaulted, reliving the experience multiple times, and participating in high-level discussions about its implications had drained her reserves. Richard Blackwell approached as she prepared to leave. Dr. Johnson, we've arranged a car to take you to your hotel, and I want to personally assure you that the passengers on Flight 2187 have all been rebooked and compensated for the delay. Thank you, Maya said. That's good to hear. I also want you to know, he continued, lowering his voice slightly, that I've called an emergency board meeting for tomorrow. This incident has exposed gaps in our policies and culture that need immediate attention. Your insights today have been invaluable. Maya nodded, appreciating his sincerity. Systemic change takes time, Mr. Blackwell. But acknowledging the problem is an essential first step. As she left the Admirals Club, escorted by airport security as a precaution, Maya checked her phone again. News of the incident had spread widely. Her social media accounts were flooded with messages, supportive comments, interview requests from journalists, and unfortunately but predictably, some hateful messages blaming her for the incident. In the car heading to her hotel, Maya finally allowed herself a moment of vulnerability. Her cheek still ached where Hendricks had struck her. The memory of that moment, the shock, the humiliation, the disbelief, remained raw. Yet alongside those feelings was a growing sense of purpose. Her position had given her the power to make that one critical phone call. Now she needed to use that same position to ensure others without her advantages would be protected too. Tomorrow she would deliver her presentation on neurological trauma treatments as planned. But she already knew her research focus for the coming year had just expanded significantly. Human factors, bias, safety protocols, these weren't just academic concepts. They were real-world issues with real-world consequences. That one phone call had changed everything. Now she needed to make sure the change was lasting. Pilot slaps passenger. FAA official fights back. Read one headline. Airline under fire after. Crew member assaults black female doctor. Proclaimed another. The video had been viewed millions of times across multiple platforms. 3 separate clips, shot from different angles, showed the same sequence. Maya calmly trying to stow her luggage, the escalating conversation, and then the shocking moment when Captain Hendricks struck her across the face. What troubled Maya most wasn't the footage of the assault itself, but the comments beneath the videos. While many expressed outrage and support, others had already begun spinning alternative narratives. What happened before they started filming? One commenter asked. She must have said something to provoke him, suggested another. Maya closed the laptop and took a deep breath. This was why she'd declined all interview requests so far. Once a story like this entered the public domain, it took on a life of its own. Facts became malleable, context disappeared, and real people became characters in competing narratives. Her phone buzzed with a text from Director Harrington. Morning news cycle is intense. Let me know when you're ready to talk strategy. Strategy. The word reminded Maya that this wasn't just a personal incident anymore. It had become a focal point for larger conversations about race, authority, accountability, and safety in commercial aviation. She showered and dressed for her medical conference presentation, choosing a high-necked blouse that would keep the focus on her research rather than the fading mark on her cheek. As she applied concealer to the bruise, Maya reflected on the strange duality of her situation. In just a few hours, she would be Dr. Johnson, the neurologist again, presenting breakthrough findings on brain trauma recovery, yet to millions of strangers online, she was now the black woman who got slapped by a pilot. Her phone rang, the hotel front desk. Dr. Johnson, there are several reporters in the lobby asking about you. We've informed them we cannot confirm if you're a guest, but we wanted you to be aware. Thank you, Maya replied. Could you arrange for me to exit through a service entrance when my car arrives? Of course, Dr. Johnson. Maya finished getting ready, mentally shifting gears to her medical presentation. She had worked for 3 years on this research, developing a new protocol that reduced recovery time for certain types of brain trauma by almost 40%. That work deserved her full attention today, regardless of what had happened yesterday. Her phone rang again. Her research partner, Dr. Chen Wei, calling from the conference center. Maya, Chen said when she answered. How are you, really? I'm fine, Maya assured her. Focused on our presentation. The data speaks for itself, and I won't let anything distract from that. The conference hall is packed, Chen replied. Word has spread about what happened. People want to show support. Maya hadn't considered this angle. Her colleagues would have seen the news, connected the dots. Her professional and personal worlds were colliding in ways she hadn't anticipated. Just tell me one thing, Chen continued. That phone call you made, was it really to the FAA director? Maya smiled slightly. Yes, Elizabeth Harrington and I serve on the same oversight committee. She made sure the situation was handled properly. That's amazing, Maya. When you told me you'd been appointed to that committee last year, I had no idea it would matter like this. Neither did I, Maya admitted. But it shouldn't have to matter. No one should need special connections to be treated with basic dignity. After ending the call, Maya gathered her presentation materials and headed downstairs. As promised, hotel staff escorted her through employee corridors to where a car waited at a side entrance. Maya slipped into the back seat unnoticed by the reporters clustered at the main doors. "To the Westfield Conference Center, please," she told the driver. As they pulled away, Maya checked her email. Among the dozens of new messages was one from Atlantic Airways Legal Department, confirming that Captain Hendricks had been terminated and that criminal charges were being considered. Another email contained draft language for a joint statement that the airline and FAA planned to release later that day. Maya read it carefully, suggested a few edits, and sent it back. The statement acknowledged the incident, outlined immediate actions taken, and announced a comprehensive review of training and reporting procedures. It was straightforward and action-oriented, exactly what Maya had advocated for. At the conference center, Maya was met by security personnel who escorted her through back hallways to avoid the small group of reporters who had gathered in the main lobby. News traveled fast in the medical community, and Maya's dual identity as both a leading neurologist and the subject of a viral video had made her the center of attention. In a quiet room behind the main presentation hall, Chen waited, with their slides ready. "You're trending on Twitter," Chen said by way of greeting. "So I've heard," Maya replied dryly. "Let's focus on what matters. Our research." Chen nodded, but then hesitated. "Maya, I have to ask. You've always been so composed, so professional, even when faced with challenging situations. Yesterday on that plane, how did you stay so calm?" Maya considered the question carefully. "Years of practice," she finally said. "As a black woman in medicine, I learned early that showing anger, even justified anger, would be used against me. So I developed what I call strategic composure. It's not about not feeling the emotions. It's about choosing when and how to express them." Chen nodded thoughtfully. "Like emotional triage." "Exactly," Maya agreed. "Yesterday, getting help and documenting what happened took priority over expressing my anger or hurt. That could come later in private." A conference organizer poked her head in. "Dr. Johnson, Dr. Wei, we're ready for you. The hall is at capacity." Maya took a deep breath, centering herself. "Let's go change how brain trauma is treated." Walking onto the stage, Maya was momentarily taken aback by the size of the crowd. Normally specialized medical presentations like hers might draw 50 to 100 colleagues. Today, the hall was packed with several hundred people. Some were clearly not neurologists, journalists perhaps, or simply curious onlookers drawn by her sudden notoriety. Maya stepped to the podium, adjusted the microphone, and began. "Good morning. I'm Dr. Maya Johnson, and along with my colleague Dr. Chen Wei, I'll be presenting our findings on accelerated recovery protocols for traumatic brain injuries." For the next 45 minutes, Maya was completely in her element, methodically explaining their research methodology, findings, and implications. She fielded technical questions with precision, engaged with counter-arguments respectfully, and highlighted areas for future investigation. The mark on her cheek faded into irrelevance as her expertise took center stage. When the presentation concluded, the applause was thunderous, more enthusiastic than was typical for an academic medical conference. Maya recognized it for what it was, partly appreciation for the research, partly a show of solidarity. As she and Chen gathered their materials, the conference moderator approached the podium. "Dr. Johnson has requested no questions about yesterday's incident," he announced to the crowd. "Please respect her wishes to focus on the important medical advances she and Dr. Wei have presented today." Despite this request, several reporters tried to approach Maya as she left the stage. Conference security kept them at bay, escorting Maya and Chen to a private room where colleagues had gathered for a small reception. Dr. William Patel, head of neurology at Maya's hospital, greeted her with a warm handshake. "Brilliant presentation, Maya. The protocol you've developed will save lives and improve outcomes for countless patients." "Thank you, William," Maya replied. "That's what matters most to me." "And about the other situation," he added quietly, "the hospital board has issued a statement of support. We've also been contacted by several media outlets. They've been told you'll speak when you're ready, not before. Maya nodded gratefully. I appreciate that. Right now I'm focused on making sure this incident leads to meaningful change, not just headlines. As she mingled with colleagues, Maya noticed a subtle shift in how some people interacted with her. There was a new deference, a heightened awareness of her presence. She had always been respected as a neurologist, but now she carried another identity, someone who had stood up to injustice and was using her position to drive systemic change. Her phone buzzed with a text from Director Harrington. Joint statement is ready to go. Press conference at 2 p.m. Can you join remotely? Maya texted back. Yes. We'll need secure link. This was moving faster than she had anticipated. The morning had been about being Dr. Johnson, the neurologist. The afternoon would require her to step into her role as Dr. Johnson, the FAA committee member, addressing airline safety and passenger treatment protocols. After saying goodbye to colleagues, Maya found a quiet office where she could join the virtual press conference. A technician helped set up the secure connection, and soon Maya could see a conference room at FAA headquarters, where Director Harrington, Atlantic Airways CEO Richard Blackwell, and several other officials were gathered. Dr. Johnson, Harrington, greeted her. We're about to begin. The format will be a brief statement from each of us, followed by a Q&A. Are you comfortable proceeding? Yes, Maya confirmed. I've reviewed the statement and I'm prepared for questions. The press conference began with formal statements. Harrington outlined the FAA's response, including the immediate investigation and the formation of a new task force on passenger treatment and crew training. Blackwell announced Atlantic Airways' termination of Captain Hendricks and the airline's commitment to reviewing and revising its policies. When it was Maya's turn, she spoke clearly and directly. Yesterday, I experienced something that no passenger should ever face: physical assault by a crew member. What made my situation unusual wasn't that it happened, but that I was in a position to ensure immediate accountability. My concern now is for every passenger who doesn't have the ability to make that one phone call that changes everything. That's why I've agreed to lead the FAA's new initiative on passenger treatment standards and reporting procedures. This isn't about one incident or one airline. It's about ensuring that everyone is treated with dignity and respect when they travel, regardless of their position or background. During the Q&A, reporters pressed for more personal details about the assault, asked about possible legal action, and questioned whether race had been a factor. Maya maintained her professional demeanor, redirecting focus to the systemic issues and policy changes. While I can't speak to Captain Hendricks' intentions, she said in response to one question, what I can tell you is that the data shows a pattern of black passengers, particularly black women, reporting mistreatment at higher rates. That's not my opinion, it's statistical fact. And that's what we need to address through better training, clear accountability measures, and accessible reporting systems. When asked if she planned to sue the airline, Maya was equally measured. My focus right now is on creating meaningful change. I'm more interested in fixing broken systems than in personal compensation. As the press conference wrapped up, Maya noticed several social media alerts on her phone. Clips from her statement were already being shared widely, with comments praising her poise and focus on systemic solutions rather than personal grievance. One comment in particular caught her attention. This is what using privilege properly looks like. Dr. Johnson could have just taken a settlement and moved on. Instead, she's using her position to fight for everyone who can't make that one important phone call. The observation was astute. Maya had never thought of her professional achievements and committee appointment as privilege. She had worked incredibly hard for every opportunity. But in that moment on the aircraft, her position had functioned as a form of privilege, giving her access and power that most passengers wouldn't have. After the press conference ended, Maya remained connected to speak privately with Director Harrington. You did well, Harrington said. Kept the focus exactly where it needs to be. It's just the beginning, Maya replied. We need to move quickly while attention is focused on this issue. I'm already reviewing complaint data from the past 5 years looking for patterns. The task force members have been selected, Harrington informed her. Top safety experts, diversity specialists, crew training professionals, and 2 passenger advocates who've experienced mistreatment firsthand. Good, Maya nodded. Lived experience matters in this work. As they discussed next steps, Maya realized how dramatically her professional focus had expanded in just 24 hours. Her neurological research would continue, of course, but now she had taken on another crucial role, one that could potentially impact millions of travelers. That evening, back in her hotel room, Maya finally allowed herself to fully process the events of the past day and a half. The assault itself, the immediate aftermath, the investigations and meetings, the press conference, the public attention. She looked at her phone, which had been buzzing constantly with notifications. Friends and family had been reaching out nonstop, concerned about her well-being. Colleagues expressed support. Strangers on social media alternately praised her courage and questioned her motives. Maya sent a group text to her closest friends and family. "I'm okay, taking time to process everything. We'll call tomorrow when things calm down." Then she did something she hadn't done since the incident. She watched the full video of the assault, start to finish. It was strange seeing herself in those moments, observing as both participant and witness. The calm questioning, the reasonable requests, the sudden shocking violence of Hendrix's action. And then, most importantly, what happened next. Her remarkable composure as she reached for her phone and made that one crucial call that changed everything. Maya closed the video and opened her laptop. There was work to do. The task force would need preliminary recommendations within 2 weeks. And while the world was still focused on the dramatic moment of the slap, Maya was already looking beyond it, toward the systemic changes that could prevent such incidents in the future. That one phone call had changed everything for her. Now she needed to create systems where such calls weren't necessary, where dignity, respect, and accountability were built into the fabric of air travel for everyone, regardless of who they knew or what position they held. It was time to turn a moment of personal trauma into a movement for lasting change. "Thank you all for being here," Maya began, surveying the room. 6 months ago, I was just a passenger trying to store my carry-on bag. Today, we're gathered to implement the most comprehensive overhaul of passenger treatment standards and crew training protocols in commercial aviation history. The room was quiet, attentive. Many present had been initially resistant to change, viewing the incident with Captain Hendrix as an isolated event rather than a symptom of deeper issues. But the data Maya and her task force had compiled over the past 6 months told a different story. The Johnson protocols, as they've come to be known, aren't just a response to what happened to me, Maya continued. They're a response to the thousands of incidents that go unreported or unaddressed every year. They're a response to the patterns we've uncovered in our comprehensive review of passenger complaints across all major airlines. Behind her, a large screen displayed key findings from the task force's report. Disparities in how complaints were handled based on passenger demographics, inconsistencies in crew training related to conflict de-escalation, gaps in reporting systems that allowed problematic behavior to continue unchecked. What we're introducing today isn't punitive, Maya emphasized. It's preventative. It's about creating an environment where every passenger is treated with dignity and respect, and where crew members have the training and support they need to handle difficult situations appropriately. In the front row, Richard Blackwell, CEO of Atlantic Airways, nodded in agreement. His airline had become an unexpected ally in this work, implementing preliminary versions of the protocols months before they became industry standards. The transformation had been remarkable. Customer satisfaction scores had risen, complaint rates had dropped, and employee morale had improved. "I'd like to acknowledge Atlantic Airways for their leadership in this area," Maya said, gesturing toward Blackwell. "Their willingness to not just acknowledge a problem but to actively work toward solutions has set a standard for the industry." Blackwell's expression was serious but appreciative. The past 6 months had been challenging for his airline. The viral video of the incident had initially caused a significant drop in bookings and stock price. But the company's swift and comprehensive response, guided in part by Maya's recommendations, had gradually restored public trust. Now, I'd like to outline the core components of the Johnson protocols, Maya continued, advancing to the next slide. For the next 30 minutes, she detailed the protocols that would soon become mandatory across all U.S. airlines. Enhanced crew training in conflict de-escalation and bias awareness. Transparent reporting systems accessible to all passengers regardless of technical literacy. Regular data analysis to identify patterns of concern. Clear accountability measures for staff at all levels. And perhaps most importantly, a fundamental shift in how passenger concerns were addressed. From a defensive posture to one of respectful engagement. These protocols aren't just good for passengers, Maya explained. They're good for business. Airlines that have piloted these approaches have seen decreased incidents, improved customer loyalty, and reduced liability costs. As Maya concluded her formal presentation, she noticed a figure slipping quietly into the back of the room. Robert Hendricks, the former co-pilot, whose actions had set all of this in motion. His presence was not unexpected. Part of the Johnson protocols included a restorative justice component, where staff members who had violated standards could, under appropriate circumstances and with proper preparation, participate in education and reform efforts. Before we move to questions, I'd like to introduce someone whose perspective has been valuable in developing these protocols, Maya said. Captain Robert Hendricks has agreed to share his experience and what he's learned through this process. A murmur ran through the audience as Hendricks made his way to the podium. He looked different from the angry man who had struck Maya 6 months ago. Humbled, perhaps, but also more self-aware. "Thank you, Dr. Johnson," he began, his voice steady but quieter than Maya remembered. "6 months ago, I made a terrible mistake. I allowed stress, impatience, and yes, unconscious bias to override my training and my duty of care to a passenger." Hendricks paused, glancing at Maya before continuing. "I lost my job, my reputation, and nearly faced criminal charges. But what I've gained through this process is far more valuable. An understanding of how quickly unchecked biases can lead to devastating actions, and how those actions affect not just the person harmed, but entire communities." The room was silent as Hendricks described his journey through intensive bias training, therapy, and eventually, participation in the task force's work as a case study. "I can never undo what I did," he concluded. "But I can help ensure it doesn't happen again, to anyone on any flight with any airline. The protocols Dr. Johnson has developed would have prevented my actions that day. They would have given me tools to recognize my stress responses and manage conflict appropriately. They would have flagged my previous incidents and provided intervention before escalation. They would have created accountability at every level." As Hendricks returned to his seat, Maya stepped back to the podium. The moment wasn't about forgiveness. That was personal and not required, but about transformation, about using a painful experience to create meaningful change. Captain Hendricks' willingness to participate in this process demonstrates a key principle of the protocols, Maya said. "Accountability isn't just about punishment, it's about learning, growth, and prevention." During the Q&A session that followed, airline representatives raised practical questions about implementation timelines, training costs, and integration with existing safety procedures. Maya and her task force members addressed each concern thoroughly, having anticipated most of the pushback. "We understand this represents a significant investment," Maya acknowledged, "but compared to the costs of litigation, reputation damage, and lost business when incidents occur, these preventative measures are not just ethically sound, but financially prudent." As the formal meeting concluded and attendees broke into smaller discussion groups, Director Harrington approached Maya. "You've accomplished in 6 months what we've been trying to do for years," Harrington said quietly. "Creating industry-wide consensus on passenger treatment standards seemed impossible before you came along." Maya smiled slightly. "Sometimes it takes a shock to the system to create momentum for change. I just happened to be at the center of that shock." "It's more than that," Harrington countered. "You could have used your position to pursue personal compensation or to simply punish Atlantic Airways. Instead, you channeled your experience into systemic reform. That's remarkable leadership." Across the room, Maya noticed a group of Flight TU attendants engaged in animated conversation with task force members. These frontline staff had been some of the most enthusiastic supporters of the new protocols, recognizing how proper training and clear procedures would make their difficult jobs easier and safer. A young black female flight attendant caught Maya's eye and approached. "Dr. Johnson, I just wanted to thank you personally," she said. "Last month I had a situation with a passenger that could have escalated badly. But because of the preliminary training we received based on your protocols, I had tools to handle it professionally. You've changed how we work, how we're treated, and how we treat others." As Maya thanked her, she reflected on how far things had come since that day on the aircraft. The moment when Hendricks' hand had connected with her face had been shocking and humiliating. The security officer's initial move to remove her rather than her assailant had been infuriating. But that one phone call had changed everything, not just for her, but ultimately for millions of passengers and thousands of airline employees. After the conference concluded, Maya met with her research partner Chen Wei at a nearby cafe. While the aviation safety work had consumed much of her time over the past 6 months, Maya had maintained her neurological research and clinical practice, refusing to let one aspect of her professional life overshadow the other. "The Johnson protocols are officially being implemented next month," Maya told Chen. "It's still surreal to hear something named after me." Chen smiled. "You deserve the recognition, but I'm more excited about our new research grant. The preliminary results on the modified treatment protocol are even better than we anticipated." They spent an hour discussing their medical research, a welcome return to the work that had been Maya's primary focus before the incident. As they were preparing to leave, Chen asked the question Maya had heard countless times over the past 6 months. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you hadn't been able to make that call? If you hadn't known Director Harrington?" Maya nodded thoughtfully. "Every day. That's what drives this work. The protocols aren't just about preventing crew members from mistreating passengers. They're about ensuring that when problems do occur, the response doesn't depend on who you know or what position you hold." Later that evening in her hotel room, Maya opened her laptop to review the final published version of the Johnson protocols before they were distributed to airlines nationwide. As she scrolled through the document, she paused at a section titled Equitable Response Procedures. This had been the most challenging aspect of the protocols to develop, creating systems that ensured all passenger concerns were taken seriously, regardless of the passenger's status, appearance, or eloquence in stating their case. The solution had been elegantly simple: standardized initial response procedures that removed subjective judgment from the equation. Every reported incident would be documented, every complaint would follow the same assessment pathway, and regular audits would ensure the system wasn't being circumvented. Maya's phone rang, her mother calling for their weekly check-in. "I saw you on the news again," her mother said when Maya answered. "My daughter changing the airline industry." Maya laughed softly. "Just trying to make sure what happened to me doesn't happen to anyone else." "That's what makes me proudest," her mother replied. "You could have just taken their money and moved on. Lord knows they offered you enough." It was true. After the incident, Atlantic Airways had offered a substantial settlement, hoping to resolve the matter quickly and quietly. Maya had declined, insisting instead on systemic changes and industry-wide reforms. "Money wouldn't have fixed the problem," Maya said simply. "No, but that phone call did," her mother pointed out. "I still can't believe you had the presence of mind to call the FAA director right there on the spot." Maya thought back to that moment. The shock of being struck, the disbelief as security, moved to remove her rather than Hendricks, and then the clarity that had come with knowing exactly who to call and what to say. "That call changed everything," Maya agreed. "But the real change is making sure nobody needs to make that call in the future." After talking with her mother, Maya returned to her review of the protocols. Tomorrow she would meet with airline training departments to discuss implementation. The work was far from over. Changing policies was just the first step. Changing culture would take longer. 6 months ago, Maya had been focused solely on her medical career, her research, her patience. Now she balanced those responsibilities with her role as an architect of industry reform. It wasn't a path she would have chosen, but it was one she had embraced with the same dedication she brought to all her work. That one phone call had indeed changed everything, not just the outcome of a troubling incident, but the trajectory of her career, the structure of an industry, and potentially the experiences of millions of travelers. As she closed her laptop, Maya thought about all the passengers who would never know her name or her story, but whose journeys would be safer and more dignified because of what had happened that day. For them, there would be no need for that one crucial phone call. The systems themselves would protect them, and that, Maya reflected, was the true measure of change. Not when exceptional connections create exceptional outcomes, but when ordinary interactions consistently reflect respect, dignity, and care for every person, regardless of who they are or who they know.